Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We'll get to the JRC in a moment. First, a brief disclaimer. If you're unfamiliar with the Stop the Shocks campaign or the campaign against the troubled teen industry, all pertinent links are going to be right there in the description box for you. Should you want to do a deep dive on either subject, you should definitely be able to do so. Also, trigger warnings. This channel is marked not for kids for a reason. I do use profanity. And when we do cover topics like the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of people with mental health issues and disabled people being tortured and abused. If you got young children present that are watching and they are 16 and younger, parental supervision, very much advised, alright? As you can see, I am indeed getting back up on the horse after writing out another autistic hyperfixation. And I do want to tell you guys about something just a little quick that's off topic before we jump in today. That is one of the things that is a double-edged sword for me with my diagnosis. Is that I will get these hyperfixations. Some of them are lifelong. Like my absolute obsession with studying history, in particular medieval, Renaissance era, and also the Roman period. Probably more than is probably psychologically healthy, but there you are. And then, excuse me, I'm watching Storm Chasers, Missouri, Anyways. The other hyperfixations tend to be on a smaller scale. They usually completely and utterly take over my life and preoccupy me for short periods of time, after which they are utterly and completely abandoned. Sometimes I come back to it later, sometimes I don't. But where it has impact is on things such like doing my videos. For example, keeping up on chores. Remembering that I still live here in the world and that, though I despise it, at some point I have to get out there, take the headphones off, and go people. So, that's what's been going on. But when you go into those smaller hyperfixations, it does come to the point of obsession where it closes everything out, usually much to our detriment. Problem is, we can't just turn it off. We have to write it out. Or find a more logical way of being able to handle the hyperfixation without putting our entire lives on hold almost as a byproduct. So, I don't know if any of you out there can relate to that, but just figured I'd point that out because it's not something that I hear a whole lot of us talk in depth about before. I mean, I know about the overwhelming, overpowering lifelong ones that has been discussed on many times, but the little mini hyperfixations that can hold us captive for months, days, or even an hour or two at a time, and how it can completely close out the rest of the world, and you're closing yourself out from the rest of the world without even realizing you're doing so until somebody points it out. Yeah. But anyways, back to where we left off, and folks, we're getting real close. This is video 96. We don't have that many to go before we finish up with these comments. So, we are going to read this one here from Citizens Commission on Human Rights International, also known as the CCHI. So, or CCHR. I like to call it I. Sue me. Actually, please don't. Unless you're the government, in that case, bring it on, because discovery will be like, I will just have a field day. I have questions. Anyways, Let me go ahead and get started here. The Citizens Commission on Human Rights International, a 55-year mental health industry watchdog, supports the ban on electrical stimulation devices for not only self-injurious and aggressive behavior, but also for any behavioral issue, especially as the students subjected to this are not consenting individuals. And by the way, JRC, but their parents signed the consent form is not the person who's on the receiving end giving their consent. I hate to be the one to break it to you, but just because the person, mommy's signing the form, doesn't make what you're doing to that child right, and it doesn't mean that they've agreed to it. But the parents did on their behalf. Okay, their parents are consenting to it. The individual stuck on that barbaric so-called torture program did not. And I get real tired of having to make that distinction. My God, it shouldn't be that difficult to figure out, but here we are. But they don't know what's best for them, said every abusive parent ever. Just putting it out there. But let's go ahead and continue. The Harvard Law School Project on Disability published a report, Torture in Law. Arguments in the U.S. discussed the United Nations Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, also known as CAT, which is the U.S. has ratified. It's the understanding of the CAT's intent requires for an act to constitute torture, there must be a showing that the actor, in this case JRC, had the intent to commit the act as well as the intent to achieve the consequences of the act. It is required to show individual mental health workers specific intent to inflict severe harm, and the government writ large condones their conduct. Go off! Go off! Literally, just by the federal government's silence over the last several decades on anything that has to do with the JRC speaks far louder than any words ever could. It looks suspicious as hell that a tiny little school, not even a small gathering of schools, but a tiny little school, somehow has this ability to stranglehold our whole government and not have a single federal investigation land on them, in spite of the fact that they have had 6 deaths inside their so-called school walls. Maybe not necessarily the JRC location, but that shouldn't matter because it's still the same damn people doing the same damn shit that got them kicked out of California. Okay? My God. It is unbelievable to me and makes no coherent sense how one tiny school has that much power. How? You know? I would love to know. I think we all would love to know the answer to that question. Because usually with that level of protection means you gotta know somebody. Just saying. If anyone wants to know what radicalized me, just watch the channel, you'll figure it out. The JRC staff may argue that they intend to treat, not torture, but that is semantics. If staff are led to believe this, then those training them arguably mislead them about the torturous nature of the device. I'm sorry, but how could you even be misled in regards to the device? Does nobody know how to use their eyeballs anymore? Has everybody somehow devolved into complete brainless morons that they can't look at those videos to what they do to those kids and not see it for what it is? Like, was there a whole generation of people that were lobotomized that we don't know about? I do wonder. Because how could you look at what they're doing and not see it for what it is? How are you able to be misled about such a device? Like, where were you raised? Gotham? Jeez. Anyways, let's continue here. Harvard Law counters the intent argument. The scientific literature on the efficacy of coercive mental health treatment undermines mental health workers' claims that their intent is not to harm. Thank you! And that's not just something that can be said to the JRC. I would like to say that to every single ABA sycophant out there. The scientific literature on the efficacy of coercive. And yes, I find ABA coercive when one of the ways they go about doing things is taking something that you love and forcing you to pretend to be neurotypical to their satisfaction before giving you back your own shit. If that's not coercive, tell me what is. Explain it to me like I'm 3. Just putting it out there. It seems perverse to expect that would-be torturers first be sufficiently trained on mental health care standards before they form the requisite intent in applying coercing methods. Or, and just hear me on this, stop trying to use coercive methods on people just because you find us weird. But your behaviors could be handled in completely logical, safe, evidence-based, and over again proven methods that doesn't rob me of my sense of self. You know? Just putting it out there. Furthermore, recently the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has signaled that coercive practices, including psychiatric intervention on the grounds of medical necessity or the best interests of the patient, may well amount to torture because they generally involve highly discriminatory and coercive attempts at controlling or correcting the victim's personality, behavior, or choices, and almost always inflict severe pain or suffering. Oh my god, it's so good it must be fattening. I'm going to read that again. Say it again. Somebody get this person a megaphone and a soapbox. I'm going to put them on the public square. I'm going to read it again. Moreover, the Special Rapporteur on Torture has signaled that coercive practices, including psychiatric intervention on the grounds of medical necessity or best interest of the patient, may well amount to torture because they generally involve highly discriminatory and coercive attempts of controlling or correcting the victim's personality, behavior, or choices, and almost always inflict severe pain or suffering. Go off! If that's not a war cry against particular tactics, I don't know what is, and I highly approve. Am I able to adopt an organization? Sorry. Probably not a good way to put that, but my god, somebody's saying it other than me. It just provides that nice reinforcement that I may be batshit crazy, but batshit crazy like a fox. Right. A recent New Zealand government inquiry into the use of electric shock without anesthetic on children for behavior modification, upheld by the country's Solicitor General, finding that such treatment met the legal definition of torture, the infliction of severe pain and suffering by a person acting on the behalf of the state for the purpose of punishment. Thank you. But it's consequences. It's the same damn thing, Karen. Right? While the JRC is privately operated, it receives state funds. It can be argued then that the JRC acts as an agent of the state, that the use of shock for behavior issues constitutes a form of punishment. It definitely does, because providers have very close relationships with their regional offices in regards to directing and making decisions in regards to care for an overall treatment program. So, technically, if the state is sending you a child through means of a special ed department of a particular jurisdiction, or however that happens, they're acting as a state entity because they are taking in that kid on the behalf of the state, however it comes about. That is 100% factual statement. The World Health Organization and the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights recently issued a guideline on the mental health, human rights, and legislation, condemning coercive mental health and behavioral practices, stating, "There is limited evidence to support the success of coercion to reduce the risk of self-harm. And when violence, coercion, and abuses occur in mental health services, not only does the service fail to help people, but they compound the original difficulties by re-traumatizing people using the service." Speak on it. The JRC students should not have to deal with unexpected and unpreventable pain. There has to be a better way. The ban on the ESD devices should proceed. Agreed. Thank you very much for saying what we've all been needing to hear for years. And it's nice to see a mainstream entity finally go after, because the crux at it, it's at the heart, it's ABA. Even if this is the most extreme case. If you don't, much like when we talk about behaviors, if you don't handle the root of the issue, there will always be another JRC that pops up someday down the line. Let me say that again. If you do not deal with the root issues that causes individuals like those at the JRC to do what they do and get away with it, then years down the road, another JRC will pop up, and then another, and another, and another, until the rot is dealt with completely. And on that, we're going to go ahead and close out, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few we do get do tend to get removed from time to time, so please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, don't forget to hit the comments, and make sure that you are still set up to receive notifications from us. I am back on the horse now, as it were, and I will be coming back to you this Saturday after Thanksgiving, using you all as my excuse to avoid any and all Christmas shopping that would force me to people. And we will go ahead and continue on with the Down the Rabbit Hole series, as well as the Snake Oil Salesman series. I do appreciate your time, all, and as always, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye, everyone.